So for my math manipulative lesson plan, I created a manipulative using marshmallows and toothpicks. The lesson plan is created for third graders and the title is Marshmallow Area. The standard I used was 3MD7A and it says, find the area of a rectangle with whole number side lengths by tiling it and show that the area is the same as would be found by multiplying the side lengths. So this lesson was created to show students that when you multiply length times width, for instance 3 times 4, you get 12, and if you create tiles, you would count up the tiles and that would equal 12 as well. So this connection is hopefully to be made after teaching this lesson. The objective for the lesson is that students will be able to correctly identify or correctly answer 3 out of 5 activity questions by using the concept of tiling to determine area. So for my pre-assessment, I'm just going to lead a basic discussion on area, have students explain any real-world applications that they can think of, see if any of them mention addition or multiplication, and see if any child actually mentions the concept of tiling. For the formative assessment, I'll do 2 things to formatively assess the students. First, I will obviously look at their activity answers on their questions that they do as a class to see how well they perform on that. And then also I will be able to observe them using their manipulative, see if they're actually using the marshmallows and the toothpicks to understand a new concept. Students will be given the opportunity to self-assess. There's a portion on the activity sheet where they will either write the word graham cracker, chocolate, or marshmallow, depending on how well they understand the concept of tiling with the use of the manipulative. Students do not have to use the manipulative for the entire lesson. This is how I differentiated it. All students have to make an attempt to use it. However, if they decide that they're not really understanding it, then they can use pencil and paper to draw the rectangle and break it into individual tiles. Students will also be given the opportunity to choose if they want to work individually or if they want to work with a partner to complete the activity questions. So those are 2 specific ways that differentiation was implemented. The resources that will be needed will be a smartboard, YouTube, because the video will be shown to the students at the beginning of the lesson, marshmallows and toothpicks, of course, for the manipulative, activity sheets, pencils for students to answer the activity questions, an online timer so students can manage their time as they complete the activity, and then a document camera as well because the activity sheet will be displayed at the end of the lesson so students can kind of compare answers. For the lesson procedure, it's broken down into 4 specific steps. First is the pre-assessment, which I just mentioned. It'll last 10 minutes. It just includes a basic discussion of area, and this will allow me to determine the student's baseline knowledge. Second, I'm going to show a YouTube video, and this video does a wonderful job at explaining the physical attributes of a rectangle. And then at the very end, the speaker divides the rectangle into tiles. So this will serve as my lead into introducing students about the concept of tiling to determine area. Also show different examples, either using the dry erase board or the smart board, just kind of explain what we'll be doing throughout the day, and that'll last 15 minutes. Next will be the activity, where students will actually have the opportunity to use the manipulative. I will display an online timer for 20 minutes because students will have 20 minutes to complete the activity questions. They can work individually or with a partner, as mentioned before. And then at the very end, there will be a whole class wrap-up. Students will be able to discuss how they liked the use of the manipulative, how it helped them understand the concept. I also want students to come up and share different examples, maybe create their own area problems and show how to use the marshmallows and toothpicks to find area. So that'll also be a way to formatively assess the students, how well they're able to explain this information to their classmates. And by including all of these instructional strategies, multiple types of learning styles will be considered. The YouTube video will appeal to both visual and auditory learners. Students can work individually or with a partner, so that'll appeal to interpersonal and intrapersonal learners. So lots of different things were considered when creating this lesson so that all learning styles would be addressed. Some higher order thinking questions that will be addressed at the end of the lesson during the whole class wrap-up. I'll have students identify some careers where area would be important to know. For instance, such things as construction or even farming. Hopefully students will mention some of those real world applications. And also I want students to critique the use of the manipulative. I think it's a wonderful way for students to understand tiling and begin to understand that concept and how it connects to area and multiplication of side lengths. However, they may not feel that it was that beneficial to them. So I want them to critique the use of it. Some specific accommodations and modifications. Students who have difficulty working with materials appropriately will be moved to either like a corner or the back of a classroom at a table where they can have their own working space so they are not distractive to other students. Also, depending on the skill level of students, I will lessen the number of activity questions or modify them to where they're not so complex or as involved. And a specific thing I would like watched for during my lesson is how the students actually use the manipulative. Often when you add materials into a lesson, sometimes students get a little overwhelmed or carried away and they may not use the materials in an appropriate way. So I would like whoever's watching me, if I were to teach this lesson, to observe if they use the manipulative for the intended mathematical purpose. Here in a second, I'll show you how students are expected to use the manipulative, and this student will answer one full activity question, so you'll be able to see how the marshmallows and toothpicks are supposed to be used. But as mentioned before, the whole purpose of this lesson is to show students that tiling helps you determine area in the same fashion as multiplying length times width.
sound.